Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
The question is, what is the scariest moment of your life? Or if that's too traumatic, well, you have other options. But for me, I have a lot of scary moments, and they all seem to involve automobiles, usually me driving them. But this one I'm going to tell you about is not me driving. It involves a dead milkman, though. We took a trip. I don't remember the year, but it was in the 2000s, teens, to Texas, and we flew to Austin, and this guy picked us up in a rented van with a trailer on the back of it. And the trailer had all of the rented equipment in it. And we played in Houston, it was fine. And then the next day we go to Dallas, and there is an ice storm, and it became apparent to me that this guy who's from Texas, he was hired by as part of the production company that did the whole 3-day tour thing, had no clue how to drive in conditions involving snow or ice. And I was in the back of the van. I didn't want to be like a backseat driver, but I was like, this is not looking too good. We were fishtailing a lot. I even remember texting one of my friends back home, I'm probably gonna die or something. And he heads up to an on-ramp, and suddenly we are doing a whole 180. And that's the part that was really scary to me. I thought, for sure, this is it. This is the end. And the trailer bounced into the guardrail, and luckily it didn't flip over, because I think it would have probably taken us over, and that would have been disastrous. But we got stuck, and we were stuck for a long while. As if that was, I was glad that we didn't get hit by any other traffic coming. It could have happened, but it didn't. And eventually what is it, a pickup truck with some, I guess, Hispanic Americans saved us and got us out of there. If it weren't for them, I don't know, we might still be there, and we might have died of I don't know, hypothermia or whatever. But they got us back on the road, and to my relief, Dave Reckner, our manager, who was on tour with us also for this little stint, took over the driving and steered us safely and confidently, for the most part, to the show in Dallas, which we actually played to about, I don't know, 5 or 6 paying people. There were more people in the production of it and in the other bands than actually were there to see the show, because it was so hard. The conditions were so terrible. I don't know if you understand Dallas highways. Maybe people from around there know it, but they're just not made for ice. And that was the scariest moment of my life. So that's it.
Can I make a quick addendum to your story?
What?
Quick ones. The first is, this is my impersonation of Dean when we went into the tailspin. He actually did this. Whee! And Dean, that is correct, right? You actually did raise your hands and go, whee!
Hey, remember, Rodney, when you and I got drunk flying over to Europe and there was terrible turbulence, we were like, whee!
Yeah, Dean and Dan's actually been on rides with me, on roller coaster, on like carnival rides. And the closer I am to death, the more I enjoy it. But the gentleman who drove was a super nice guy. Really.
Oh, he was, yes. Yeah, I don't mean to disparage him.
He's famous. He's the guy who had to give Danzig the bowl of French onion soup.
Yes.
And Danzig went, "You call that French onion soup? The cheese isn't even melted." So he told us the story, and we spent that whole ride going, "You know who makes good French onion soup? My mother!" Yeah, that was...
That's a good one, Joe.
So my scariest moment, this was kind of hard, because I don't have that many scary moments. I guess Actually, I do every day, really, with my anxiety issues. But my threshold for that, you know, um, I guess like I was in a car accident that was really bad and stuff, but it really wasn't that scary because it happened so suddenly that right after it happened, I was like, oh, that's it. I mean, it was a really bad accident. Neither of us were hurt, but the cars were totaled. Anyway, I guess it was probably in November of 2013 when Chrissy was like, "Oh, I feel like something's weird inside, like in my abdomen." And like, just to be honest, like she's had, you know, there's been some hypochondria in the past, so I just was kind of like, all right. And then at one point, she kind of like fell over, and I thought this was serious. And I took her to the hospital, and I had my aunt watch the kids. And you know, I dropped her off, and then I went to go park the car, and I was taking my time getting back, and the doctor, you know, said that she had cancer, so and a tumor on her kidney. This was 2013, and that was the scariest moment in my life because everything just came like crashing down in my mind, thinking like, what's going to happen? Like, is she going to die? Like, or is there chemotherapy? Like, how far along is this? You know? And thankfully, it was early enough on that they were able to do surgery like 3 months later, and she's fine. She's been fine. The other scary part was I don't know if you guys remember when I had quit Drexel College of Medicine, and I had insurance with them. And it was like 2 months before that diagnosis. So that was a little scary too, that we were like, how are we even going to take care of this? And then Obamacare stepped in.
Good.
Thank goodness for Obamacare.
Yeah.
Real life scary.
All right. So I'm going to tell a little ghost story. I think I've told you guys this before. I know Joe and Rodney have heard it, but maybe it was so long ago you might have forgotten it. This is probably one of my very earliest memories. I must have been 2 or 3 at most. And we were living in our house in Trumbarrowsville, Pennsylvania, and I was in a bedroom that was towards the front of the house, which was down the hall from my parents' bedroom. And I remember waking up in the night, and my view faced the doorway of the bedroom, where the hall was. And right outside the hall was this little alcove. And to the left, you would go up into the attic. And to the right, you would go into this creepy closet, which was like down into the eave. So it was a regular sized door, but it like angled down and it got into nothing. And when it got to the edge of the roof. Anyway, it was all dark, of course. And I suddenly saw these 2 white figures. They were like outlines of people. They were completely white. And they were standing at the foot of my bed. I must have been, I think I was in a large crib. I was not like a baby, but I was like maybe 2 or 3. And they stood there for a long time, and I was like, I couldn't really do anything about it. And then they started moving, and they came up to next to the crib, and they were kind of looking down in the crib at me. I finally managed to like squeak out a scream or something or other, and my parents came. Of course, you know, they didn't believe me, and I didn't see anything or whatever. But I don't know why. That's one of the things I still remember from my childhood. And then the kicker is that I don't know if anybody else here or watched the latest season of Doctor Who. There was a 2-part series which was really great, which involved the Master. And I was watching, I think it was the first episode of part 1. And all of a sudden, the aliens in the episode were just like the ones I had seen as a kid. They were like white outline, like white figures, completely white and glowing. And it really freaked me out to see that after all these years. So I remember that from my childhood. That was pretty scary as a child. You know, there have been other things, but I think that was one of the weirdest things that happened to me. So yeah, that's my scary story. I'm sticking to it.
Dean, pay close attention to when we get to recommendations, to my second recommendation. All right, just trust me on this, because it'll dovetail nicely with what you told. Joe, I was saying I'm disappointed you didn't tell the story about the cemetery near where you live that has all the young scarlet fever victims in it, and how you were recording one night and you wound up with what sounded like children's voices on the recording.
Oh, I probably forgot. I probably erased that out of my memory.
Now it's back. Okay, so I want scary stories from the listeners, please, in the comments, and I've made Joe remember something horrible. Okay, you guys have probably heard the story from me 1,000 times, but the people watching have hopefully never heard it before. When I was in college, my first year of college, I went home to stay at my folks' house for a weekend. And I was sleeping on the sofa in the front living room on the first floor, because the minute you leave for college, your bedroom becomes something else. It's like, son, that's where your mother spearfishes now, or it's not there, it's gone, and you can never reclaim it. So they're like, sleep on the sofa now. So I'm lying on the sofa watching TV. I think it was like 2020 was on or something back then. So I look up, and over in the window, I see a hedge that looks a lot like Charles Manson. I mean, a lot like Charles Manson. It's, it looks a bit bushy. And I'm a realist. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in monsters, anything like that. So realist brain goes, wow, that bush looks just like what would be a really tall, because he'd have to be like 6.5 feet high to be looking in the window. A really tall Charles Manson. That is amazing. And I start laughing. And then the bush that looks like Charles Manson starts laughing. Only the bush is laughing like this. And I'm like, oh, dear God, that is a real person, a real super tall Charles Manson. So Charles Manson was like my height. He wasn't that scary in person, but like huge Charles Manson, like Sasquatch Manson, that's scary. So he's looking, and he's like, and I mean, he's making a noise. And I go to scream. And it's that when you open your mouth and nothing comes out. And I'm there for what seems like an eternity. Finally, I get a scream out. The legs get moving. I run down to my parents' bedroom, pound on the thing. We got to call the cops. We call the cops, and the cops show up. And I describe the guy to them, obviously the 6.5 foot tall Charles Manson. And I think the cops are going to take me away, and I'm going to have to look at pretty ink blots for a while. But instead, the cops go, we got a pretty good idea who that is. But they said it in a way where there could have been a couple of suspects. So I was like, how many 6 foot tall Charles Mansons are roaming around Coatesville, Pennsylvania? And Coatesville, Pennsylvania is a scary place. Joe will attest to this. I used to live at the bottom of a hill where there was a mental asylum at the top, and occasionally patients would escape and wander through my backyard. But nothing prepares you for giant Charles Manson. So we called the cops. So we get to spring break time, my freshman year, and my parents go to Florida. I know it makes no sense. And they're like, son, could you watch the house? We're really worried about giant Manson. So I wound up in that house alone for a week. I slept during the day. I was up all night. I was like armed with, just like it was like Conan, where, a barbarian where he hides the weapons around the thing. I was completely armed. I just kept expecting giant Charles Manson to come back. He didn't. But when my parents sold the house, I was so glad, because I from then on, whenever I visit, I would just like, I know he's coming back. I know he's coming back. So that is my tale of giant Charles Manson.
I just remembered another scary story, and you reminded me by talking about a mental hospital, because years and years ago, well after Byberry had been closed, my friend and I broke into Byberry. Well, I mean, broke in, whatever. And there were so many signs of people that were like currently living there, and we just wandered around for a while. And then when we came out, we were just talking. This is probably like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're walking down this like paved road, and all of a sudden headlights turned on, and this car comes racing at us, like straight at us. I'm like thinking in my mind, oh, it's a security guard. And then I was like, yeah, but they actually look like they're gonna really try to run us down. So we ran onto the grass, and the car came onto the grass, And we were just running, and you know, from movies, you don't run straight when there's a car coming. So we like ran into the woods, and then the car like drove around and was waiting on the other side. Then we went up toward the buildings, and and there's like these 8 or 9 foot walls, and we were like just standing there waiting for this car to leave, and it was just like idling there. And we finally just booked it, and then they took off, and we ducked under a fence. That was pretty scary. I don't know if it was like, maybe it was a neighbor. I remember hearing that the neighbors would mess with kids that broke into there. I don't know. I never went back in, and it's gone now.
Yeah, and Dean's little glowy men thing reminded me of my alien dream, which I already told. But
Yes.
that was also scary in a way, because I don't know if I mentioned this part when one of the aliens noticed me looking at him, and everything was peaceful up until that. But when he noticed me looking at him, he conveyed something to me. I don't know if it was he or she or whatever, but like I became paralyzed because I became paralyzed with fear. Like I became recognized. It was a dream, but that's scary.
You shouldn't tell anybody, right?
So it's recommendation time.
Joe, wait. Also, you have to
What?
pay. You and Dean both have to pay close attention when we get to my second recommendation.
Okay.
Recommendation time.
Last week reminded me of this recommendation because Dean talked about mushrooms and you had all the psychedelic stuff going on. It's a movie that's on DVD and in streaming services or whatever. It's called Dirty Pictures, and Rodney knows it. Sasha Shulgin, the guy who created MDMA, ecstasy, and a lot of other psychedelics, is the subject of this movie. And they talk about his life and his research in psychedelics and his relationship with the DEA. To me, it was an interesting movie. I watched it twice. But what I really would like to recommend it for is that it includes an interview with our friend Stuart Frescus, who was a friend of Dave's also, and a good friend of the Dead Milkmans. We still are in contact with him, but you get to see him talk about his research with psychedelic chemicals. And I think it's fascinating, so I recommend it.
Cool. I recommend drinking lots of water.
I would do that, but I'd have to get up every 5 minutes to use the bathroom. I don't know how those
Yeah,
people
I shouldn't
do it.
even be drinking this late. Well, people don't know it's late. They probably think it's Saturday morning, but it's not.
Yeah, it's
like
Saturday
late.
morning cartoon time. Okay, I would like to recommend a food product this time. There are prepackaged pasta meals from a company called Tiberino. This one is particularly good. It has a little packet of saffron, and it's packaged with seasoning and pasta, and it's really easy to make. It's vegan. If you're vegan, you can eat these. They're really easy to make. It has 3 servings. If you're a couple, you can probably finish it yourself. Our family had one of these tonight, the 3 of us. If you're single, you can make them and have lunch the next day. Or they have a large variety of flavors. This is one of our favorites: panette positano, zucchini, and saffron. And this is another favorite, which we had tonight: linguine with pesto genovese. You can see all that delicious seasoning down there. Really easy to make. It takes about 15 minutes. You can find them online, and highly recommended.
I will check that out. All right. So since this is the Scatty episode, my first recommendation is a very witchy, very scary band called the Bestial Mouths. Now, if you've seen us live recently, when we do Make It Witchy, that scream the howl at the end, that's from one of their songs called Witch Dance. They've got a new album coming out, some new videos, so you'll probably see one of those little links pop up. Absolutely amazing band. Recently contacted by them, and it turns out, oddly enough, Dead Milkmen fans, which is something I will be scratching my head over for an eternity because they're really good. So yeah, the Bestial Mouths, an incredible band. There'll be a little thingy here, and please check them out. Check out the new videos, and when the new album comes out, please check that out. Second recommendation, Joe and Dean, listen carefully. This is a film called The Nightmare by Rodney Asher, the other Rodney A. I was just lucky enough to be on a podcast with him. Fascinating guy. I don't know if you ever seen Room 237, the film in which all the interesting people give their theories about The Shining.
I know the movie. I've never watched it.
Oh, it is interesting. It's a very brilliant film, and he's a very funny, very interesting guy. I was lucky enough to talk to him. But there's a film of his that I didn't get a chance to ask him much about, and I wish I had, called The Nightmare. The Nightmare is a film that's a documentary, and be careful, it's on Amazon Prime, but there are some twin films of The Nightmare. People tried to make knockoffs, so you want the Rodney Asher version. It is a documentary about people who have sleep paralysis. Doesn't sound that scary at first, but when these people lie in bed and can't move and can't scream, what they're seeing are beings in their rooms.
I've had sleep paralysis as an adult. It's pretty terrifying.
I've never had it. You guys have seen me. I go right out. So I was unfamiliar with this. And basically, he made a documentary that sort of becomes a horror movie because you really feel for these people. It's like, this woman's like, I'm lying in bed. I can't scream. And the Hat Man comes in again. And I'm like, oh, God. Oh, God. Yeah, Joe, that is the face I made through the whole documentary. Much love to Mr. Asher because this thing is really, really spooky. It's on Amazon Prime. I can't recommend it enough. You will sleep with not only all the lights on in your house, but you're going to ask everybody on the block to turn the lights on. It is really, really scary. So those are my two recommendations.
I'll check it out.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We got high production values tonight.
This is